This is Jeanie with Messy in the Middle with Jeanie, and I am going to talk to you today a little bit about grief and loss. If you watch my other videos, you know that I got a little bit emotional at the end of the one where I was talking about my son and losing him. I will do more videos as time goes on about his specific situations. But one of the things that I have dealt with quite a bit in my life is grief and loss. And I want to just discuss with you all how I got through it and maybe some pointers, maybe some points of view that might help you to not feel so, alone in your grieving. And so that was prompted by an experience that I had this week. And so I just thought I would go ahead and talk about that a little bit since that was on my mind. So, as I said, this is Jeanie, and you are on Messy in the Middle with Jeanie. And I am middle income, middle America, middle-aged lady, and I am just living here trying to do my best to connect with other people about the things that are on my mind and the things that matter most to me. So today, as you may know if you've watched my other videos, I do not like to talk in front of the camera without doing something because it makes me feel awkward. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap my babies, my grandbabies have their birthday tomorrow, so I'm gonna wrap their presents while I talk to you today. So as far as grief and loss goes, I have a philosophy about grief and loss that goes something in the neighborhood of the following. I feel like any change in your life that you go through, whether it's something that happened that caused a big change or something that you chose to change, can really bring with it a grieving process. And I think that so many people in the world do not give those changes enough credit for causing a person to go through a grieving process. Just some things that come to mind. Moving and changing your location, either minimally or dramatically. Losing a friend, and I don't mean losing a friend like they passed away. I mean losing a friend like it just doesn't work out for you to be friends anymore, and that's totally okay. But sometimes when you lose a friend, there's a grieving process that goes with that. A divorce, whether you wanted it or not, there is some grieving that comes with divorce. Any kind of breakup between you and a spouse, or you and, as I said, a friend, or any kind of dramatic change in a relationship status can come with a little bit of a grieving process. Even if it's something that you chose. And then there is the grieving that we all think about when you lose a loved one or you lose a friend that passes away. And then there's other things like changing a job, a new trajectory in your career. All of those things come with a grieving process. And my philosophy about grieving is that you have to let it come when it comes. Just because you are not in the most convenient of places or in the most comfortable of moments doesn't mean that the grief is not going to hit you. And sometimes it hits you in the most awkward moments. And I don't know how much grief you all have had, but I'm going to tell you that there have been some times when my grief has hit me when I least expect it and has really thrown me for a loop. And I think that seems to be common when I've talked to other people about it. It just seems like there are little things that you wouldn't think about if you were planning your grieving time, which I feel like is kind of silly. I don't know how a person would plan to grieve, but there are going to be times when these things hit you in a way that you were not expecting, in a time that you were not expecting. And really, I feel like the best way through it is to allow that to happen. I think that it is very common for people to not want to show other people that they're hurting, or they don't want to be emotional in front of others. They don't want to cry. They don't want to, whatever. And I think that all of that is a way to kind of stifle your grief. And I'm not saying you should be a holy hot mess. Let's be fair. If you're at work and you're in the middle of a meeting and your grief hits you, it is appropriate to excuse yourself, of course, and take care of that and then come back. But I do think that it's important to allow yourself those moments when you feel like you just don't know what to do and your grief just hits you out of nowhere. I feel like those are the most appropriate times to actually allow yourself to experience that and to just learn to be comfortable with the fact that grief is not linear. It's all over the place, and you just don't always know what to expect, and you can't micromanage your grief. I have grieved over the loss of family members. You all know I've grieved over the loss of a child. I've grieved over the loss of a marriage, of relationships, of jobs. I was in the Marine Corps right out of high school, and I loved it. And I think I mentioned that in one of my videos before. I really loved it, and it wasn't meant to be. I ended up getting injured, and I ended up leaving the Marine Corps much earlier than I planned. And I certainly wouldn't have the life that I have now, nor would I have had the life that I have lived without me having that dramatic change happen. But that doesn't mean that it didn't come with some sadness, right? There's always a little bit of sadness that comes with those big changes, especially when you really kind of had your heart set on something. I really think it's okay for you to acknowledge that and be okay with grieving about it. This week, so what I haven't really explained is that I work for a company that provides medical supplies to children. And one of the things that is hard to prepare a person for, I train coordinators when they come in. And one of the things that is really hard to prepare a person for is losing one of the children that you care for. You talk to their parents every month, or it could be a foster parent, it could be a grandparent, it could be a sister or an aunt or an uncle. You really talk to the family every single month, and when you have that moment where you find out that that child has passed, there is grieving that comes with that. It's almost impossible to not have an emotional response to that. You really connect with these families, and I think that it's hard to underscore that enough when I'm talking to my new trainees about what their potential response could be to something like that. I mean, we talk about it, but until it happens, it's really hard to know how you're going to respond. And it could be a child that you've been taking care of for years, or it could be a child that you've been taking care of for a couple of months. But losing them is really hard. And just knowing that you were doing your best to provide for them, and that even with that and all of the other things that were being done for the child, that didn't change their trajectory, right? They were still on a path of medical complexity that doesn't change no matter how much you love them and no matter how much you care for them. And I think that it is something that I wish I could impress upon people when they come in a little bit more about how hard that is. Losing my own child came, of course, with a grieving process. Let's be real. I am still grieving that, and I will be for a very long time. I don't think that my grieving for that is in any way over. And for those of you who have lost a child, you can probably identify with the idea that there is just a hole in your heart that no matter how hard you try, you can't fill. And I think that that's because nothing can take the place of your child, right? And so really you just have to spend the time and energy to think about them, to honor them, to do things that like I said, honor them, that give you peace, knowing that you would be that they would be really happy to see that you're doing something that acknowledges their struggle or acknowledges their pain that they went through or helps others that might be in their situation. And if you can find a way to do that, I really think that for me, that has been very helpful. And that's one of the reasons that I'm doing the videos, is because my son was, and I think I mentioned this in the other video, he was a teacher. He was nonverbal, but he taught so many people so much just by his very existence. And that level of compassion and just temperance and patience and all of the things that he taught just by existing, I really try to honor that by continuing his legacy of teaching. And that's why I love being a trainer, is because it gives me the opportunity to teach other people things that they maybe wouldn't have experienced if they didn't get to know me, they didn't meet me, they didn't come to work where I work. I think that it could, I really hope that I further his legacy by teaching other people how to understand parents that are going through what they're going through, watching their child struggle every single day, knowing that you are really, no matter, even if you don't want to acknowledge it, out loud, there's a part of your heart and a part of your brain that knows that everything that you're doing is, despite your best efforts and despite all of the heart and the soul and everything that you put into caring for that child, you know that at some point it's gonna be over. And all of what you've done will have mattered, certainly, in creating a quality of life for them that is unimaginable for most. And I think that it is really important to remember when that finally does come to an end and they finally do pass, and whatever your belief is, I I don't pretend to know what everybody's beliefs are. But when they pass, that everything you did is the best that you could have done to care for them, and that even though it didn't change where they were and it didn't change their trajectory, that it made their time here in this life so much better because of the time and energy and love that you spent on them. And I encourage you to focus on that when you are having those moments that interrupt a meeting or interrupt a class, or in the middle of your random Tuesday when you're getting coffee at your favorite coffee place and it just hits you like a ton of bricks and you have no idea what even caused it. It could be a certain tone. It could be a child rolling by in a wheelchair. It could be a kid standing there holding a football. I mean, there are so many ways that children are lost to us. And I think that if you can really, like I said, try to further their legacy and try to remember that you gave them the best life you could possibly give them while you had them, that is all you can be that can be expected of you, and that's all you can expect of yourself. That's the hardest part, right? Like, so many people will tell you, oh my gosh, you were such a great mom and you did so many great things and you took such good care of them, and you know that and you feel that, but also there are those moments, especially when you're deep in grief, that you have your doubts and you wonder if you could have done something different, or you could have made changes that would have made the outcome be a little bit different, or something like that. So that's what I think when it comes to children, losing children. When it comes to losing older loved ones in your family that you know are, their time is coming, and you've watched them and you've maybe helped care for them, and you have, done all of the things that grandchildren and great-grandchildren and children do for their elder family members. Knowing that you did the best you could to take care of them is really peaceful. And I encourage you to remember all of the good things that you did to care for them. And that doesn't mean that everybody's relationship is fantastic, because trust me, there have been plenty of relationships in my life that have not been fantastic. But I think that if we can just for a second remember the good things that we did and the good times that we had with the person that you're grieving over, it really, for me, it's really helpful to know that I did have those good, peaceful, lovely moments with my family members and friends that I've lost. I have lost friends. You don't get to be about 50 years old without losing a friend or two. Sometimes more than that, depending on where you are in your life and what your life looks like. But in my life, I've lost a couple of friends, and it's sad and it's hard, and you go through a grieving process. And again, weird things hit you. And I'm going to tell you, as somebody who's gone through losing family members, losing friends, again, losing a marriage, losing touch with people that you value so much in your life, changing jobs, whether you lost the job or you really needed to leave the job. If you choose to see it, there are always positive things in every situation. And it's really difficult to move on from those positive experiences without a little bit of sadness. And I've been in friendships that were toxic. I've been in all kinds of relationships that with coworkers and friends and significant others, that sort of thing, that could have easily, I could have looked at the bad, and that could have been how I got through the grief of losing the relationship. Because like I said, even if you chose to get divorced, you're going to be sad that you lost your marriage. Nobody goes into a marriage thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to get divorced in 8 years. Nobody goes into that. If you didn't love them and you didn't want them in your life, you would not have married them. And on some level, even if it's, I would even consider that in an arranged marriage, and I've never been in one, so I have really no experience with it. I'm going to qualify by saying that. But I would think that if your culture does follows arranged marriage as a custom, you don't go into the marriage thinking you're going to leave the marriage, right? You go into the marriage, you may have reservations and you may be reluctant, but you go into the marriage knowing that this is your spouse, right? You don't get married without that. And I think that it's valuable to acknowledge that sometimes when that doesn't work out the way you want, there's grief that comes with that. And I think it's okay to acknowledge it. I think it's okay to experience that grief as well. I am I don't really know what else to say about that. When it comes to marriages, I really feel like, it's a mixed bag. So many people have so many differing opinions about marriage, but I do feel like any marriage that you go into, when it ends in whatever way it ends, God forbid you lose your spouse to some ailments, that all of that comes, or an accident, for goodness sake. I mean, losing someone to an accident is so hard because it's so sudden, right? You didn't have any time to prepare. I feel like if you can, on that note, if you know that the change is coming, or that the relationship will be no longer, or that you that there's something that's going to come that's going to cause you, that could potentially cause you to have some pain associated with the change, any kind of grief or anything like that, I invite you to consider front loading some of your grieving. And what I mean by that is, if you can get in with a grief counselor before it happens, I invite you to do that. I will tell you that though losing a child is the hardest thing that I will probably ever have to experience in my life, I was the most prepared to lose him. I knew that it was coming. He was very sick for a long time, and we did a lot of front loading of grieving. We did lots of work in trying to figure out, processing through all of the feelings that we were having going into his passing, so that by the time he passed, we still have grieving. Please don't misunderstand. We still have moments, and there are moments when I don't know who you are, but I can just not even hold it together. I'm done. Like, the wrong person says the wrong thing, and it cannot even be something rude or disrespectful or anything. It's just they say something and it hits my ear in a way that just throws me for a loop, and it will happen. But I think that that's normal. I mean, I would assume that that's normal. Everything I've ever known or been told by any kind of grief counselor or therapist or anybody like that is that it's very normal to have those moments when it sneaks up on you. I think though that if you can reason with some of it beforehand, if you know it's coming, and could be a child, could be a parent, a grandparent, an aunt or uncle, if you can reason with some of it ahead of time and process some of it ahead of time, I really do feel like I said, I was the most prepared for my son's passing, and then I'm more prepared for that than I have been for any other passing of any other loved one in my life. And I think it's because I took the time to do the work, to get the counseling, to allow myself to feel the pain of his loss, or the pain of my loss, however you want to look at it, before he even passed. And I think that was really helpful for me. So if you're in that situation and you're trying to figure out how you're going to make it, you know it's coming like a freight train. And you have no idea of what to do or how to manage the grief that you know you're going to experience, because you will. And you have to know that. Please tell me you know that. I really invite you to try, and not everybody can, but if you can try to approach the situation in the most realistic way possible and understand that the grief is coming and the loss is coming, and that the best thing you can do is to embrace what time you have. And also, I really feel like if you can, like I said, acknowledge it and really just try to work through some of that beforehand, I know that I have had losses in my life that I have had a harder time dealing with, kind of over time, than even my son passing in the after the fact. I think going into it, like I said, we did a lot of front loading of grief counseling and things like that, and lots of conversations, acknowledging that he was going to be gone, and really just thinking, not waiting for the day, but really having those conversations about, okay, we know this is going to happen eventually. What are we going to do with ourselves once he's no longer here? How are we going to live our life? What are we going to do? Because so much of our life was wrapped up in him and what he needed and taking care of him, and not just our life, but also the life of our children. You know, our other children were very much involved in his care in so many ways, and what we were going to do to help our children through the grieving process was a huge question that we had. And how was life going to change in a way that we could just still move on and still live our lives and still have our everyday? And you know, sometimes I think that when you have an experience like that, it's easy to want to just shut down and not feel anything, and to not want to not want to deal with anything. And, certainly having other children helps with that. At least it helped me, because, I still had to get up in the morning and make sure everybody got to school and everybody was doing all the things they're supposed to be doing. But I think that part of what we were concerned about was trying to make sure that our children were able to process through their grief, because they were losing a brother. And so they of course have had their losses as well, and so and that including their brother, and loss of parents, and not parents, they've not lost parents in death, but they've lost relationships with their other parents. So as I mentioned before, we have 6 children, and we are a blended family. My husband and I have no children together. They're all our children. We consider all of them ours. We had a lot of broken hearts in our house. The relationships with the other parents were strained. Sometimes that is the nicest way to describe the relationships that they had with them, was strained. And I really think that, we've spent a lot of time working with them about grief and understanding that it's okay to be sad, that relationship is not what you wanted it to be, not what you hoped it would be, not what you pictured in your mind that it would be. It's okay to be sad about that. It's not okay to take that out on other people and all the things that you talk to your kids about in those situations. But I feel like they had experienced already so much grief before, that it was super important that we took the time to help them process through losing their brother. And we tried to do as much of that ahead of time as you can. I mean, obviously, you're still going to experience more grief when it actually happens. But if you can kind of work through some of that beforehand, and when you know it's coming, I invite you to try that and see if that helps. I'm not promising that it's going to, but that's my experience. I really hope that whatever you're grieving about, whatever way that you're grieving, is healthy, and that you are seeking help from professionals, and that you are absolutely spending the time and allowing yourself to have those moments, and to really embrace the sadness, and also remember the goodness. It's hard to do. I know it's hard to do. But I hope that for you. I wish that for you. And I hope that if you, like I said, if you are experiencing grief of any kind, or you know that that's coming because of an imminent situation, I really hope that you're getting the help that you need, or that you do get the help you need when it happens, because it's so important. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to take a look at it, you're still going to be here, and you're still going to be living your life and learning how to manage the grief that you're feeling, so that you can still live your life and still have the experiences that you're meant to have. It's really important. And so help yourself be healthy, and get the help that you need, and let yourself feel your grief. And I hope you have a really great day. And I have reached over my 30 minutes that I try to promise that I will. Well, I guess I don't promise, but I did tell you that I would try to keep my videos to about 30 minutes. So I hope that whatever you're going through at some point is peaceful, and that if you are not seeking the professional help that you need, that you will at some point do that. I hope you have a really great day. This is Jeanie with Messy in the Middle, and we'll talk soon.